All right, everyone, we are going to start tonight. And remember, we take the water from the baptismal font and place it in remembrance that when you were baptized, and one of the reasons why we're here is you were baptized in Jesus' death and resurrection, so that we die to our sin and we rise up to new life in Christ. A couple weeks ago, we started with who Jesus is, and remember, Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do other people say that I am?" And they gave a couple different answers, and then he said, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter said, "Well, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Last week, we talked about what Jesus did. So we heard the birth narrative, we got healing stories, we got feeding stories, we got miracles, we got death and resurrection. You guys did a great job of finding all the Jesus stories. So who Jesus is, what Jesus is about. This week I want to talk about why Jesus is important. So I have asked your small group leaders if they could talk about why Jesus is important to them. And the reason for this is we could study Jesus from a historical standpoint and understood that he was a Jew that lived in the first century in Palestine. We could understand Jesus as a spiritual leader, but unless we understand why Jesus is important to us in our own relationship with God, none of the other stuff matters. Okay? So, which one of you would like to go first? Jack, you want to lead us? It's okay. Jack. Everybody give a hand to Jack. Be encouraging.
Hey, gang. So, why is Jesus important to me? I've come up with, because Pastor Andy said I have about 5 minutes. So, two main reasons. First off, Jesus sacrificed himself and died on the cross for me, for my sins. The incredibly imperfect human being that I am, I have no way to ever ask somebody or ask him to do that, and yet he did it for me. Second thing of why Jesus is important to me is in his time on earth, he taught us how to live. Many stories and parables that he shared with us about how he wants us to live. And I just want to share a couple of those with you tonight, and then a story that tags along that. First off, both of these are from Matthew 25. In my Bible, one of them is titled The Final Judgment. And it's where Jesus is talking about all the nations are gathered in front. They're all gathered around. And God says to them, the king will say to them, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you any of these ways? When did we see you these ways?" And Jesus replies, "Truly I say to you, as you did this to the least of my brothers, you did this for me." Also in Matthew 25, the parable of the talents, where he talks about a man is going on a journey. He calls his servants together. He gives one of his servants 5 talents, and talents can be anything you want them to be. Let's say they're $100. He gives one of his servants 5 talents, 5 $100. He gives another one 2. He gives another one 1. And the man goes away. And when the man comes back, he calls his 3 servants together. And the first servant says to him, "You gave me 5 talents. I bring you back 5 more talents." So this person took the 5 and brought back an extra 5. And the master says to the servant, his master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, so I will set you now over much." enter into the joy of your master. So this parable has really touched my heart one day. There was a gentleman here at church. His name was Jack. Obviously no relation, and it's not because his name was Jack, but Jack was a very kind, thoughtful man who was dealt some challenges in his life. He unexpectedly lost his son, and his son had a daughter who was somewhat mentally challenged, had some development issues, and Jack took her in. So him and his wife took her in after the pain of going through the loss of their son. And I would see all three of them in church every week. And Jack, with all this stuff going on, was always smiling. And we would talk about things, and his wife, unfortunately, passed away a handful of years later. And when Jack died, I was at his funeral, and Pastor Meredith did the funeral. And she is talking about all these things that Jack did, and the people that he touched, the work he did within the church, the work he did, how he supported his family, how he supported the community. And while she's doing this, she turns to Jack's casket, and she says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." I was so blown away by that. I decided right then and there that I want to live my life so that when I go, that whoever the pastor is that is doing my funeral, and when I meet Jesus, when I get to heaven, that they both can look at me and say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Thank you.
Yeah. I never had a revelation in my life. I never had the one where Jesus appeared to me and said, boom. That's never happened to me. My life's been pretty boring and dull. But everything that I believe is what Jesus taught. And that's why I believe in Jesus. I don't even have to think about Jesus. I just say like, oh, I believe you shouldn't kill. You should be nice. You should treat people well. You should, all those other things are the 10 Commandments. And that's exactly what Jesus has been talking about in the Bible, and it's the way I like to live my life. And I would bet that everybody here thinks in the same way, that you really believe in all the things that Jesus has been teaching, you just never thought about it. It just kind of happens, and that's sort of the way my life has been. It hasn't been one single boom, God was hitting me over the head with a hammer or anything like that. It's, oh, my parents talked a little bit about church. Okay. I went to Catholic school for years. Okay. I went to a Catholic college. Did all these things. But I never had one single revelation. But they're all the good things that I believe in. And that's why I believe in Jesus. I believe in the 10 Commandments. And I'm going to leave it at that.
So 2 days ago, Pastor Andy called us and said, would you be willing to get up and talk during confirmation? And I'm like, of course, I love to talk. And then I started like bouncing some ideas off, and I said, so can I talk about like moral compass, which is essentially what Bob just said, you know, that Jesus provides us with sort of a blueprint or a set of guidelines on how to be a good person. So then, over the last couple days, you know, I've sort of been thinking about this, and what else could I say other than just moral compass, because I feel like at least 8th graders, we talk about that pretty often. And then this morning, I was listening to a podcast, and it didn't have a religious, like, bend to it or anything, but they were talking, but the person was talking about how everybody is perfect. And you have to believe that everybody's perfect in their own way. And that really got me thinking about how we're all we're imperfect, but if we're all imperfect, then we're kind of all perfect, right? Like, Yes, we are perfectly created in God's image. And that everybody is accepted for who they are. And I love that no matter what. So, and then I thought, well, that kind of goes right back to the moral compass. And why believe and why follow the lessons in the parables or the stories that we talked about last week or the examples that we've read about or that we've heard about. So my thought was the whole moral compass. We're taught through the stories that we're accepting of all people because while we might be imperfect, maybe we are perfect. We are perfectly created in God's image. I also think, and so I'm about ready to admit something to you guys. We're all family here, right? We're all part of a community called church. Something only my husband knows. But so I have some problems sleeping at night. Does anybody else have problems sleeping? Or maybe you get a little anxious? And we're all taught strategies, right? What are some of the strategies that we've learned when we're anxious? Help. Oh, yeah. So do you have a strategy? Ouch. Do you have a strategy? Oh, okay, that's a bad strategy. That's absolutely what you should not do. Do not go on your phone or an iPad or device or anything. So we've all learned strategies to calm down or regulate ourselves. You're all in school. You've had social emotional lessons. I know you have. What do we do to regulate ourselves? You're 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're nodding your head yes. Okay. Or think of the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can smell. That strategy. Has anybody had somebody tell them to just start counting by 7s? Okay, that was my go-to to fall asleep for a long time, and then I got really good at math, and I could make it to 700 something. That's not helpful. So, you know what I do to fall asleep? What? Count by, well, I'm really good at my 9s too. I've tried them all. 23 would be challenging. All right, so I am not able to, I can't believe I'm going to tell you guys this. I cannot recite the Lord's Prayer in my head. I can't think it. I have to say it. I cannot think it I can't do it. I can't. But it will put me to sleep every time. It will put me in the event that I get through the Lord's Prayer, which is not very often. I'll go to the Apostles' Creed, and that one, for some reason, I can get through my head, but I cannot, think the Lord's Prayer in my head. I can verbalize it, no problem. So there's the Holy Spirit working its magic in the middle of the night when I can't fall asleep. Puts me to sleep every time. So, works in mysterious ways, right? So you can find comfort in Jesus. He taught us how to pray. For me, apparently, it's only out loud. Do you guys want to add something?
Oh, yeah.
What?
I was going to say, I do a prayer every day before I go to bed.
I love that.
Yeah, it's the same one every single day.
Can you do it in your head, or do you have to verbalize it?
Both. It depends how my day was. Now when I need to sleep, I pray to the Lord my soul to keep, guard me, Jesus, that wake me up in the morning light.
Yeah. That's the same prayer my children were taught to pray when they were little, too. And exactly, right? So to answer the question, why Jesus, I add to the whole idea of the moral compass. I think that, the whole calming thing, obviously that there's my little strategy for 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm laying awake. That will put me to sleep real quick. But also, not related to those things, I think following Jesus or why Jesus, if you believe we are the church, if you think of even how church is spelled C-H-U-R-C-H, what are the 2 middle letters? You are the center of the church, right? So that is a sense, for me, it's a sense of community. It's important to have a community in my life beyond just my my immediate friends or my immediate family, because you don't know when in your life you're going to need a community. Through a personal tragedy, through a celebration, we all need community. Humans need contact, we need community, we need people to care about us, and you find that in church, and you find that through Jesus. So.
Hi guys. So I'm probably gonna do a short and sweet. I'm very new to the church. I'm very new to the church experience. I too cannot recite the Lord's Prayer or the Apostles' Creed from memory. Well, I can't do either. But I wasn't raised to go to church, but I had always been around church. My grandparents, my grandma, this is weird. My grandma used to be Catholic, but then she met my grandpa, and now they're boyfriend and girlfriend, and they come here. And they've come here for a very, very long time. And the love and the community and the inspiration that I derived from their relationship with each other, with the community, with the church, was something that I had always appreciated and lived with but didn't interact with. Unfortunately, I did have a pretty unfortunate circumstance in my life. I lost my mother very tragically, and I was really confused with who to go to. I had my grandma still. I still have her now. But it took some time for me to start looking around and seeing that Jesus comes in many ways, shapes, and forms, and one of the most important things was a strength. And he was a strength for me, for myself. He was a strength for my family so that we could all join each other during that terrible time. The strength that he brought me and my family and the circumstances that we were in took a tremendous amount of it, and I'm grateful every day for it, but I can't tell you, that I study. I cannot tell you that I'm very well rehearsed in the Bible. I'm actually probably a little further back than you guys in terms of Bible study and knowledge. But one thing I can say is wholeheartedly, Jesus in my life has predominantly saved me and encourages me every day to be a better person and find better people to surround myself in so that I can know that the strength that he gave me, he's giving others, and I can give to other people in their time of need or in their time of suffering. It's like a strength that goes around. So I really think it's important. So even if you weren't raised with like the religious upbringing, or if you were taking it like out and taking it more personally and how it reflects in your relationship and in your life, I think that'll give you each a lot of strength independently as well. So that's my story.
That was really incredible. So many of you know that I like to think thoughts. I like to stay in my head. So I got a degree in philosophy. There are two stories in the New Testament that really are compelling to me. One is the road to Emmaus. So this is Luke 24. There are two people leaving Jerusalem after Jesus was crucified, and they are headed back to their hometown of Emmaus. It's about 11 miles south of Jerusalem. And on their way, they meet a man, and the man is explaining to him, or he asks questions like, "Why are you guys so sad?" He said, "Have you not heard what happened to Jesus of Nazareth? They crucified him. They tortured him, and he suffered, and he died on the cross. And we believed he was the Son of God, and that's why we're very sad. And the man turns out to be Jesus, so he sits and he breaks bread with them, eats with them, reveals in the scriptures what the promise of resurrection is, and they befriend Jesus on the road. And so that's when I got out of my head, and Jesus became very real and personal to me, that I have a relationship with Jesus, can call Jesus my friend, that Jesus is always there in times of trouble, in times of sorrow, in times of joy, in times of triumph. And there is that once Jesus got out of my head and into my heart, there's a big difference. The other thing, and I'm just going to quote the scripture. This is in Acts 17. Paul is talking to philosophers in Greece, and he comes across a statue that says, "To an unknown God." And he says, "Men of Athens, truly I understand that you are wise people." And then he goes on to say, it's not an unknown God. It's not an unknown God. We know who this God is. This is the God who created heavens and earth. And his Son came into the world to be among us in flesh and blood. And then he says this, and this is where it becomes very real for me. His purpose was from the nations to seek after God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and exist. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. So to me, the life and teaching and person of Jesus is so compelling to me. The way of Jesus is so compelling to me, I cannot think of anything greater. And that is why I'm a follower of Jesus. And by the way, we're going to get into this. I think we are adopting that term as follower of Jesus rather than naming ourselves as Christian. Because the word Christian has been co-opted by a lot of different people that actually don't follow Jesus. So I want us to use that term, Jesus follower. Okay? It's important that you hear the stories of people who talk about their faith, mainly because you're still developing yours, right? If I asked any of you right now, who wants to come and share why Jesus is important to you, it would be hard for you to say, "Oh, me." But let me do that. Anybody want to tell about Jesus? It's okay. We will get there. I didn't hear you. Because I want you to develop this relationship with Jesus. You're developing it with the people who promise to teach the faith to you, to help you understand why Jesus is important. But my invitation to you is when you go home this week, ask the people around your dining room table, the people who you watch TV with, at home, "Hey, Mom, why is Jesus important to you? Hey, Dad, why do we go to church?" Those types of things so that you can hear from them. And they may not be prepared for you to ask them that question. So you could say, "You don't have to tell me right now, but you can tell me like later, like we can have a conversation around it." Because they know, but they may not have those words. But I want you to have those conversations, okay? Good deal. So we now have explored who Jesus is, what Jesus is about, and why Jesus is important. So I know the question is being begged out of all of you. Who won last week? It was a question? It's no question? Do you have the answer? Us? Yeah, you're right. Us. We won. So one of the things that you will learn about God is that, do you all know what mercy is? What's mercy?
mercy is like not going as hard as you could on somebody and giving them time.
Good. Not going as hard as you could on somebody. One of the ways to define that is mercy is not getting what you deserve. So if your parents drive you home and they are speeding and a cop pulls them over and says, hey, did you know that you were speeding? You were doing 15 miles over the speed limit, but I'm going to give you a warning instead of a ticket. That's mercy. Okay? Grace, however, is different than mercy, because grace is getting what you don't deserve. Does that make sense to you? So what would be an example of grace? Bad karma. We're not Hindu, so we don't believe in karma. You have another example of grace?
Like the shelter we get. Sometimes we don't always deserve it, but we get it.
Okay. The shelter that we give.
There's a saying, you grace someone with your presence.
You grace yourself, or you are, say it again. Grace someone with your presence. So think about this. If you went to school and everybody was told that they were going to have a test, and you weren't prepared for the test, and everybody failed, but the teacher said, you know what, instead I'm going to give you all A's. That's grace. So when you said, we win, the grace for all of us is that we're going to have, next week we are not doing any study or small groups. We are going to gather here. We're going to have pizza and salad, and the hoops will be open. We could put up the volleyball net and have fun.
Can you open that little
Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff back there that we could play with, yes. I didn't. We could. So just recognize this is like a free time next Wednesday where we eat together, we'll pray together, you'll have fun together, and then we don't come back together until January. Right? So you guys got a couple of weeks off before we gather in the new year. Next week would be our last week till we gather in January. I think it's January 10th. What?
Darn. January 10th?
I think that's the Wednesday.
I'll be 14 years old in 5 days.
Wow. So that's your birthday?
January 10th.
Okay. So, it just, woo. If you are not able to participate in any of the things, we are recording them. They go on our YouTube page, so you can keep track that way. All right, so let's give a round of applause and a yay God to our small group leaders for being vulnerable enough to share their stories tonight. What? It's okay. All right, let's put chairs away. Let's get ready for small groups.